Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook on at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video. Hello, this is the Green Corn Rebellion Show, and today I am here with State Representative Trish Ranson, who is a state representative here in Oklahoma in House District 34 out in Stillwater area. How are you doing today?
Doing really well. Stillwater's a beautiful town.
That's good. So first question I have here is, where are you from and where did you grow up at?
Well, I am an Oklahoma girl. I grew up in Ponca City, Oklahoma, graduated from Poe High, which we call a nickname for Ponca City High School, and decided that after graduating from high school, I was going to go to college in another state. So I traveled very far away and went to school in Wichita, Kansas. And after I got my music ed degree, and then I moved to Connecticut. My sister was living out there, and she offered me free room and board, and so I couldn't pass that up, and so moved to Connecticut, and after several years later, met my husband, and then we moved back here to Oklahoma in 2003.
That's cool. All
Hmm.
right. So what made you want to become a music teacher?
Oh, I've always loved music. I think my first time to perform on stage was at church, and I was 5 years old, and I sang Jesus Loved Me in front of the whole church. And so that was a very fond memory. I always loved being on stage. And so when I graduated from high school, in my high school years, I was part of band, I was part of orchestra, I was part of jazz band, marching band, and chorale. And so I wanted to be a choir teacher, high school choir teacher, just like my choir teacher, Mr. Moore, who I loved dearly. Was deathly afraid of him as well, but I loved him. And so I wanted to be just like him. And so that's when I went off to college, and I took a couple of years, and it gets you do all your coursework, and then you do your student teaching your senior year. I remember doing my student teaching and my placement, because teaching music is K through 12. So I did my student teaching in the elementary the first part of the semester, and did the secondary the second part. And I remember the first day sitting in a kindergarten class, crisscross on the floor in a circle, and absolutely fell in love with kindergarten. And then I just decided, I don't think I want to teach high school. I want to teach elementary, and loved it.
That's cool. What instrument did you play in band?
Well, let's see. I played clarinet, bass clarinet, and alto clarinet. I was in flag corps in the marching band. I sang in the jazz band, and I played bass clarinet mostly in the orchestra. So yeah, just kind of whatever you needed me to do, I would do, and I loved it. I still have some of my best friends, even all these years later, are the friends that I made in band.
That's cool. I played trumpet when I was in middle school and high
Yes.
school.
Yes.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I've raised two band kids as well, and my son plays French horn. He's in the cowboy marching band at OSU, And my daughter plays bassoon, and she just finished high school, her senior year this year. And she played bassoon, but she was drum major for the marching band. And she also plays saxophone. She's one of those kids, you put any instrument in her hands and she can figure out how to play it within 30 minutes.
That's cool. Um, so what made you want to run for state representative?
Uh, that's a good question. I had been really starting to advocate for education and for the arts, mainly in education, for several years before the teacher walkout happened. Then we all walked out and went to the Capitol, and just the overall lack of reception that we received, the disdain from some representatives that I experienced, just was like, this is ridiculous. Why do we have a system like this if those representatives are supposed to represent us and they won't even listen? So I it was one of those things where I kind of thought about it, and our representative is Corey Williams, my predecessor, and he had asked me, he's like, so are you interested in running? And I'm like, not against you. and and he's like, well, you know, I think you should run. I'm like, okay. And so he ended up running for district attorney for Payne and Logan County. He won Payne County, lost Logan County, unfortunately. So, and I won House 34 2 years ago. And so it's been a wild ride, a complete blur. I cannot believe it is 2 years later type of experience. It's been a good experience, and one that I want to continue to have. But it's been amazing how quickly time has flown.
Yeah, I mean, except for the last few months, of course, during the pandemic.
This is true. These last few months have been the longest, and we talked about just the other day, our family were talking about that moment that everything kind of hinges on. So like 9/11 is a moment where life before 9/11 is completely different after 9/11, and now we have COVID-19, and life before COVID-19 is completely different than what life is now with it and what life will be after it.
Yeah.
This experience, these last several months going forward, how we land as a society and as a state, a country, is going to depend on all of our experience here in 2020.
Could you tell me about some of your accomplishments that you've been happy to be a part of since being in office?
Well, I think the I was part of the healthcare working group last fall. That was a bipartisan, bicameral task force, if you will, that studied the health, the predeterminants of health in our state. And I was honored to be chosen to that committee, but I was also, just the amount that I learned in that group was astounding. And every week we would hear from different parts of health, or it, it's intertwined in the economy, it's intertwined in education, it's all of this, it's intertwined in wages, everything. And so then going forward, week after week we would have a meeting, and Medicaid expansion would come up, and Medicaid expansion would come up, and about fourth or fifth time Medicaid expansion came up, we stopped meeting for some unknown reason. So, so I was good. I was glad to see that State Question 802 passed for Medicaid expansion. I think it's going to be what the state needs to help us get back on our feet health wise, and healthy individuals and healthy families learn better, they work better, their life is more consistent, they reinvest in their local economies. So overall, it's a really good thing that we have expansion of Medicaid.
All right. What are some things you'd like to see happen at the Capitol in the future?
Oh, well, I would love to see a lot more Democrat friends at the Capitol. That's one thing I would really love to see. We are basically 3-1 in
Yeah.
representation as far as Republicans to Democrats. I would really love to see more so that we would have um, even equal, so that way we really have to work across the aisle to get things done. But I'd also like to see some reforms being done. I think our experience with COVID-19 through unemployment, our unemployment system needs some drastic reforms, not just in computer systems, but also in how we view unemployment. And I think, there was a bill this last session that looked to limit exposure or limit access to unemployment. And if we have people who are working hard and to no fault of their own, they are in need of unemployment, and to restrict access to that is not the right thing to do. So we need to reform it to make it easier. We've got people who have filed for unemployment for the first time ever simply because of COVID-19, and it is apparent that there were a lot of problems with just the questions that are asked or the system itself. And so I'd like to see reforms there. I'd like to see reforms in education. With going forward, we're looking to open up schools in a month. And there are a lot of different things that need to happen in order for that to happen safely. But just going forward, brick and mortar public education, I mean, I love it. That is my heart, but it needs to change. It needs to adapt to a new world where distance learning is part of the equation. And we're seeing some really great strides from districts across the state who are thinking outside the classroom rather than outside the box. They're thinking outside the classroom as a way to make sure that we can reach kids from all levels. And so that's really what we have to make sure that when we're reforming education, that it is equitable for everyone, whether they live in inner city Oklahoma City or they live in Guyman. I mean, it's got to be equitable for everyone. And I think, too, in order for that to happen, we've got to have broadband access all over the state. That has to be a utility, that has to be an infrastructure that we invest in, because will not only help our education and our students, our teachers, our universities, it will also help our healthcare. It will also help our local economies. We've seen that jobs that, oh, no, you could never work from home in that job. Well, we've seen now that, yeah, you can work from home. And wow, I'd really like to live in a small town, but I'd still like my job in the big city. So having that broadband access, we could start leveling the playing field for the state too, and where people are able to choose the place they want to live rather than where that job is. And so I think that's what I'd like to see going forward is some changes.
All right. Those sound like some good things, and also some things I'd like to see as well.
Yes.
Um, so how are you feeling about the coronavirus pandemic and how it's been handled by the governor and by the mayor in Stillwater?
Well, we in Stillwater, the mayor, Will Joyce, love him. He was a parent at my elementary school when I taught his kids. And, so I go back a long way with him. And I really loved how he has addressed the issue from day one. And he was progressive, and he shut things down in Stillwater early on that other places weren't. And so it was, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, and Stillwater basically were those four main places that started to shut things down. And there has been a lot of struggle with that because, our governor does not feel the same way. And so there's been back and forth, but now we've opened things up, and we had population of students already start to move back. June 1st is when the leases start. And so we have had a big spike in our cases because of that population was getting susceptible. And just this last Saturday, our mayor instituted a mask mandate where if you are going to a business, you have to wear a mask in that business. The business needs to post signs that you need to wear the mask. And that has gone pretty well. It was very tumultuous, Norman too. And there's a petition there to recall the mayor in Norman. Well, I think there's a petition going around to recall our mayor too.
Oh,
But
wow.
honestly, if we can stop the spread or at least slow the spread a great deal, I mean it's worth it. But we do have a good chunk of people who are personal liberties, and that's against their personal liberties. But here's the thing, going forward, here in what is this? It's the mid-July. Well, starting August 1st, August 15th, maybe somewhere in there, we're going to have college students moving in. August 1st leases start again. So we're going to about double our population when the OSU students get here. If we don't have our act together when they get here, then it's just going to be awful. So I really think that that's a good thing. The president finally wore a mask this last week, and so I'm hoping that the governor follows suit as well. But I know that he doesn't want to mandate it because there's not all counties are having the same issues, and I understand that. But we do need to know that wearing a mask is part of the protocol, and so yeah.
And how did you feel about the passage of State Question 802?
802, I was so excited. It's funny, before I ran for office, I wasn't the type of person who would watch the results come in. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just wake up in the morning, I'll look at the morning news, I'll know what passed and what didn't. But I was watching and like refreshing constantly to see, because at first it was like, yes, it's passing so big, and then all of a sudden it got smaller and smaller of a lead, and to where it's like, is it going to pass, is it not going to
I know,
pass, oh my
right?
gosh. Oh, it was right there at the wire. So like I said earlier, we need to invest in our healthcare system, and I know that the opposition has talked about, well, we can't afford it, especially now, not with COVID-19 and the oil crisis and so forth. But there is a way to fund it. And the governor had found a way to fund his Sooner Care 2.0, and then he vetoed those bills. So there is a way. It's the same amount of money as Sooner Care 2.0. So there is a way to pay for it without raising taxes. We can do it. And we don't need to cut education to do it either. There are some scare tactics that were going out there. And what we will find, honestly, I wholeheartedly believe this. If we'll find when we invest that 10%, the 90% from the federal government is going to do an amazing research in not just our healthcare access for all, but our economy. I mean, we're going to have clinics and doctors' offices across the or not the United States. Yeah, I'm like thinking big. No, across the state. But it's going to take pressure off of our big metro areas of Tulsa and Oklahoma City. It's going to be a good thing overall. Just think about if you knew that you could go to the doctor and just actually have a checkup, rather than, oh, I don't go to the doctor because I don't have insurance, and if I get sick, I'll just go to the ER. No, you could actually go to the doctor, and you can take your kids and make sure that they're vaccinated, ready for school. I mean, and you wouldn't have to worry about that because you'd have that coverage. And I think that's something that we need.
All right. I was really happy to see it pass too, because it's pretty much been 10 years in the making, and something that we
Oh
should have
my
had like
gosh.
10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. So yeah,
Right.
I was really happy that it passed. I was shocked that it was such a narrow margin, but
Right.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
still happy that it got passed at least.
Yes.
Um, Last question I have here is what kind of music do you listen to?
Okay. So now this is a really tricky question because I'm a music teacher. All right. So it depends on the situation. So let's say if I'm in my car, I listen to 70s rock or 80s pop because that's kind of what I grew up with. Anything that's off of, the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack. I mean, like that's what I'm talking about, that kind of music. So I'll listen to that in the car. If I'm at home, it depends on my mood, but my go-to is bluegrass and music that is played for contra dancing, which is a outcome of square dancing. Did you get learn how to square dance in elementary school?
No.
No, okay. All right. Well, I did. And my parents were big square dancers, and I loved it. It's Irish jigs and reels. And, my father, he was a first generation citizen from Ireland. My grandparents immigrated over. So anything that is Irish sounding, I just absolutely love. And that helps keep me working. So if I'm working and I need to kind of, not daydream, then that's the kind of music that I listen to. So there's that. When it comes to Oh, and the reason I love bluegrass, well, bluegrass, if it's not just instrumental, so like the vocals, it tells a story. And often bluegrass will tell a story of, regular folk and early life and hardships and those kinds of things. So I really like to listen to that. Lately, I taught my students every year we had an experience with musicals, and so we would, let's see, kindergarten experience. We would watch it in May. Mary Poppins, and first grade would be Beauty and the Beast. Second grade was Sound of Music. Third grade was Annie, and fourth grade was Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. Again, the Irish dance music in it's Seven Brides for Seven Brothers is like my favorite. Until just a few years ago, got onto Hamilton, and they just released on Disney
On
Plus.
Disney
Have you
Plus,
seen
yeah.
it?
Not
Have you
yet,
seen it
but I'm
yet?
going to. I'm going to, but I haven't
Oh,
seen it yet.
it is amazing. I first listened to the soundtrack, and um, that's what I would mow the lawn to. And so like I said, everything that I listen to has a situation or a place for it. And I would listen to it. It was so amazing, the storytelling. And like they have these debates on the floor of the US Congress, and they're rap debates, and it's just fantastic. I mean, just the way the um different modes and the different uses of the music, the melodies of every single character is different. And at the end, I don't want to spoil it for you, but just listen at the end, because all of those melodies come together and they all work together in some way. It's amazing. So yeah, a lot of music in my life.
Well, that's interesting. Thank you for coming on.
Well,
It
thank you
means
for the
a lot to.
invitation.
You're welcome. What's your website where we can find you, and where can we find you on social media?
Okay, so my website is www.ransonhouse34.com. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and it's Ranson House 34.
All
So
right.
yeah,
Do you have an opponent this cycle?
I do.
Okay.
I have an opponent, the same opponent
Oh,
as
really?
2018.
Okay.
Yes. So I think he had a really great time, and he wanted to do it again. So
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully you will send him home again,
there you
and we
go.
can keep
Yes.
you up there at the Capitol.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.